Good evening. With gratitude to the Almighty and with a prayer to the Almighty, I would like to wish all our guests a Shana Tova, a happy, healthy new year. May the coming year bring a lot of happiness to the world, love to the world, and make a better world. And this is what Israel Heritage Foundation is all about. As Executive Director, it's my job to greet everybody and to welcome everybody, to welcome all our dear friends. I'll just apologize. I may not go in the order, so I'll cover everybody hopefully tonight. First and foremost, I would like to say hi to my dear colleague, who is my mentor and my rabbi, and I do call him Rabbi Dr. Joseph Rager. Without Dr. Frager, we wouldn't be sitting here tonight. Dr. Frager works 24/7. I don't even know how he puts in all the hours in the day to advocate and to do so much for Israel and for the Jewish people. May Hashem bless him and his wife and his son, Malkiel, who came tonight for Shana Tova and a year of much happiness. I would very much like to thank the Ryan family who helped us out so much tonight. Thank you. May you all have a sweet year. I would like to welcome and say hello to our dear president, Dr. Soloway. Dr. Soloway is a great person. He became part of our family, and hopefully Dr. Soloway is doing so much for our organization. We'll hear a few kind words from him soon. May he have a beautiful year. I can't leave out our dear honorary president, Mr. Jerry Warski, a Holocaust survivor. Mr. Warski is, I'm not to say how young you are. He's over 90 and thank God traveling to Israel for the holy days of Rosh Hashanah. He just came back from Poland and he's on the plane again. May Hashem give him a healthy year, a happy year, and long life. I'd like to say hello to our dear friend, Mr. Farley Weiss, who is the chairman of Israel Heritage Foundation. I have to mention two people that couldn't make it tonight. Our treasurer, Mr. Josh Nass, and Mr. Stanley Swed, who couldn't come tonight. I think I covered everybody. Oh, the Nachmayas family, Mr. Sam and Monica Nachmayas, who joined the board of Israel Heritage Foundation. Thank you so much for becoming part of the family. May you both have a happy and healthy new year. And of course, I can't forget my older brother, Mr. Jonathan Burkhan. Mr. Jonathan Burkhan makes sure that I'm up every morning, 6 o'clock in the morning. Makes sure I don't go to sleep before 12. He has ideas and comes up with things to do. It's like it's undescribable. There's one good part about Jonathan. Whenever I'm in the shul, I study, I learn, and pray, he doesn't bother me then. But in return, whenever he goes to shul, I get a picture from him being at the Ark, at him being at the Bima. His last picture he showed me was an old talus, and Dr. Frager and myself decided that it's about time to give Jonathan a new talus for the new year. So Mr. John Burkhan, please come up. For the new year, you'll have a new talus bag. Jonathan Burkhan, with a beautiful talus from Israel.
Oh my God.
And I hope you pray and pray for all of us for a happy, healthy new year. Wow. And use it in good health. Wow. A talus from Israel, a white and white talus, very well deserved. Jerry, please come up for a picture. Mr. Jonathan is also on the board of the Holocaust Museum in Washington, D.C. A big asset to the world, a big asset to Israel.
Thank you, Rabbi, thank you. I just don't understand why you don't answer the call on Saturday morning, and I can't give your wife a hug, but I'm learning a lot about being Orthodox. No. Sherry, you want to sit? And by the way, Rabbi Melnicki, I think you're coming up after me, so why don't you start getting up, because you're going to be speaking. I just want to thank the Secretary for coming here again. It's such an honor. You know, I was blessed to go to the Abraham Accords 2 years ago and be there, and I was in D.C. for an anniversary celebration with Jared, and the reality is it never would have happened without Secretary Pompeo. The strength of the United States was incredible under Secretary Pompeo. I know he's going to be back in Washington in 2025, and I was so blessed to be at the Abraham Accords, and hopefully there'll be more accords in the future. Thank you, everyone, for coming tonight. Rabbi Melnick, you're speaking now. Rabbi's next. What? Oh, one more? It's okay.
We have very special guests from Utah tonight. Mrs. Christine Heatman and Mrs. Sarah Hunt, two very nice guests who came all the way from Utah. They are big pillars of the Israel Heritage Foundation. May God bless you with a happy and healthy new year. We have to cover the press, Mr. and Mrs. Larry Gordon. The newcomers, Mr. and Mrs. Yochanan Gordon. We have we have the Five Towns Jewish Link, Queens Jewish Link. We have Yaakov Serela and Chapsi, and we have Mr. David Ben-Horon. And we have Sarah Lehman from the Hamodia who came to cover, and Israel National News, of course, who came tonight. May you all have a Shana Tova. This Shabbos, I was pacing up and down my house, and I knew I had to say something about Mr. Pompeo. And to speak about Mr. Pompeo, you got to touch something that will shake the room here tonight. And I came up like this. The Talmud says that wine has two opposites. Wine makes a person very happy. The Torah says, "V'yayin yisamach lavai v'nosh." We marry off our children we do the ceremony, it's wine. We do circumcisions with wine. Passover, the 4 cups, wine. Every Friday night to make Shabbos, wine. We sacrificed animals in the Holy Temple, wine. Whatever we want to wish somebody a l'chaim for life, it's on wine. But we know wine has an opposite effect also. Wine could get people to do the worst things. What alcohol could do to a person, I wouldn't want to say here in public. Wine could be very bad. Not everybody is trusted with wine. Could you imagine, America had over 75 Secretary of States. We had 46 presidents, 46 vice presidents, hundreds of assemblymen, hundreds of people sitting in the House, hundreds of governors, and no one ever was trusted with wine. Only one, Mr. Mike Pompeo, was trusted, and they named a bottle of wine, Pompeo wine, that was made in Israel. What does that tell us? We are having the honor sitting tonight with the most trustable person that Israel has, that America has. We know wine is from the 7 fruits that Israel was blessed with. Israel was praised with wine. Mr. Pompeo, the people in Israel praise you. The people in the United States praise you, and the world is praising you. You are a blessed person. May Hashem give you a long life, a sweet life, and a happy life, and a Shana Tova. Thank you so much for coming. It's the 3rd time that you have honored coming here to my dear Dr. Frege and to myself. It's the biggest honor that a person can do to us coming here, and we look forward to spend with you a lot more time. I would like to call upon a very respected friend of mine, who I know already for close to 50 years, one of the biggest pillars in Borough Park, a very successful business person and a very big scholar, Rabbi Melnick.
Good evening. Dr. Prager, Mr. Pompeo, I will call this members of the dais, an honored guest. This past Sabbath, we read in the book of Deuteronomy, "V'haya ki tavo," there will come a time, a good time. V'haya is connotes happiness. Ki tavo el haaretz, you'll come to the land, asher Hashem Elokecha noten loch, v'yirashta v'yishavta ba, nachla v'yirash v'yishavta ba. There'll come a time that Rabboni Shalom Hashem will give us the land. It said the word lach, lecho, to you, individual, in a singular form, and not in a plural form, lachem. Why is that? Each individual, each human being is an individual, as the Gemara says, the Mishnah said in Tractate Sanhedrin, 4th Perek, Bishvili nivra ha'olam. For me, the world was created for me. Just like we have no two snowflakes are alike, no two human beings are alike. So God has created from Adam and Eve, each human being is an individual by itself. There's no cloning, there's nothing, everybody is by itself. So the world was created for this individual. Because we're individual, the world, Eretz Israel, was given to you, God said. And it's incumbent of you to make sure that you keep the laws in order not to lose it. We are ish echad belev echad. We are one nation, one tongue, one human being. There's a sefer, Moshe Cordovera, who wrote a book by the name of Toma Dvorah, that he said, Kol Yisrael arevim zeh bazeh, or zeh lazeh. It depends how some people word the words. What does that mean? We are arevim. We are co-signer. We are one together, which means not that I am your guarantor, you're my guarantor, but your body is my body and my body is your body. If we do something wrong, it affects all of us. We have, hopefully, future President Mr. Pompeo. He brought us together in Eretz Yisrael, the land of us, to make sure that we have such a land, to recognize, the world should recognize we are one nation that we have to work together in order not to lose it. I wish each and every one of you Chag Sameach, Shana Tova, you should have a happy and a healthy new year, and a healthy one. My line of work is health, and Dr. Prager would also know the most important thing is health. Once you have that, we have everything. God bless you. Thank you. Have a pleasant evening.
Okay, I'm really taken aback by all the honorings. I'm Joe Frager, and it is really a tremendous honor before Rosh Hashanah, before the new Jewish New Year, which is, of course, not only the Jewish New Year. I'm going to tell future President Pompeo this. Adam was born, first man was born on the Jewish New Year. And therefore, this time is probably the most crucial time for the world. And it is also, of course, the period when God is closest to the world. So he sees clearly what we are doing here today. And of course, we hope that and pray that this event and the other events that we've done have catapulted Secretary of State Pompeo above all in the Republican Party and above even the Republican Party. So that just gives you some clue as to where we're coming from. I want to thank you for all coming. I know how difficult it is before the Jewish New Year. You're all preparing honey cakes and incredible food. So all the wives, particularly my wife, who I know how hard she's been working for the Jewish New Year. So this Sunday is a very big day, and they're all out here. Mike's Bistro. By the way, it's not coincidental that Mike's Bistro and Mike Pompeo come together here, because Where's Mike? Anyways, even Ed Cox, I have to say this, and I promised Ed I would say this, and I always say it when I see Ed Cox at any of our events. This is the son-in-law of Richard Nixon. Richard Nixon, for those who don't know it, saved the land of Israel clearly, for sure, 100%, 1973. We were not doing too well. And it was because of his father-in-law that we succeeded in defeating the Egyptians and the Arab forces against us. And Syrian forces. It was a very important step by his father-in-law, and I can't say it enough, Ed. I cannot say it enough. And before Rosh Hashanah, the father-in-law was Richard Nixon. So Richard Nixon, in my view, by saving Israel, there's nothing greater you could do in the world. Truman, it says, he was so upset that by bombing Hiroshima and Nagasaki, he was so upset, he told his rabbi, what do I do to, do tshuva? What do I do to do repentance for killing so many people? I mean, he had to do it. There was no question he had to do it. But the rabbi said to him, recognize the state of Israel. And Truman, that's what he did. So in his mind, he recognized the state of Israel because he felt guilty about what he had done in World War II, even though he saved the world in the process. But these are decisions made by incredible men. Secretary of State Pompeo is definitely capable and willing to do all of this, and will outdo Truman, will outdo Richard Nixon, will outdo any of them, because just as he outdid all the other secretaries of state, except maybe Jefferson. Okay, I made a mistake once, except for Jefferson. Even with the the movement against everything that Jefferson has done, but he was clearly the greatest. Anyway, so the next speaker is Dr. Stephen Soloway. And Dr. Stephen Soloway has become, as Rabbi Katz said, very close to the Jewish people. He is an incredible rheumatologist that was taught by a professor at University of Pennsylvania School of Medicine, Dr. Schumacher, who was the father of rheumatology. And he's clearly one of the best rheumatologists in the country. But in addition, he's very involved in politics and very involved in the Jewish people, and he came all the way from near Vineland, New Jersey, to be here with us tonight. He's writing his second book. The first book is Bad Medicine, and by the way, this is a Bad Medicine really should be written Good Medicine, because that's what he's trying to point out, that this is what we should be doing, is good medicine. And without further ado, Dr. Stephen Soloway.
Oh, good grief. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and thank you all for being here. I'm not a good speaker, and I always start with some stupid line to get over the edge, but I'm so honored that Mr. Honorable Mike Pompeo is here. Truly, a man that transcends, gets things done, intelligent to the core. You all can read about his resume and whatnot, but the man is going to be the next president. A true patriot, West Point, an attorney. I'll forgive him for that, but nonetheless, to be where he is, maybe being an attorney is good. You can protect yourself. What he did to Soleimani is only a blessing. And luckily, we have a good Secret Service. They'll keep him safe, his family, hopefully me too, because after me saying this, who knows? But really, he's a man who transcends all the others. Michael Jordan transcends the sport, and Serena Williams transcends this, and everyone has something that transcends something. Mike Pompeo transcends the American political system. He understands the world. He understands the conflict going on in Ukraine. He understands what's going on in Russia. He understands that other than my 2 Taiwanese friends that I just met here, he understands that China is a lousy pile of garbage, imprisoning their citizens and killing them. And I mean, he gets it. So the man knows everything. There will never be a second Holocaust with Mike Pompeo as president. There is a second Holocaust under this Joe Biden guy who's a skeleton with Parkinson's syndrome. And it's a shame, but it is what it is. Let's see. John, do I need to say anything else? Joe? Joe?
I think that you should say that you're going to support Mr. Pompeo in every respect.
It's a foregone conclusion. I will support Mr. Pompeo in every aspect. I'm disappointed that my friend Congressman Jeff Van Drew is not here tonight. However, I want to make mention that Assemblywoman Beth Sawyer, a Republican in South Jersey, is here. And Beth is a real patriot. You know, she defeated some serious Democrats that were ingrained in corruption forever, you know, the unbreakable corruption. And she won the fight, and she drove further than I did to get here tonight. And I don't have a lot more to say, except I'm getting used to these speeches a little bit more, and I'm thankful to be here, and I'm thankful everyone's healthy. I want to wish you all a happy and healthy New Year, whether you're Jewish or not. And in fact, if you're not Jewish, you should be Jewish, and you can have 2 New Years, and it'll be kind of cool. So I write my own material, as bad as it is, and that's it. So welcome, thank you, and come again. And I want to say this. When Mike Pompeo is president, I really hope he will come back and visit us again. No matter how high he rises, we all love him and want to be with him. Thank you.
Thank you, Steve. Thank you, Dr. Soloway. Beautiful. Great job. In the room before, when Mr. Pompeo was in the reception room, I asked him if he would sign a few bottles of wine, of some Pompeo wine, so we could bid him off for Israel Heritage Foundation. He only signed 4 bottles of wine. The opening bid is $5,000 per bottle. I'm telling you, everybody, this is a great deal, because I think this will not only quintuple, but will go much higher one day. But whoever is interested in buying a bottle of wine could see me, and it will be something beautiful to take home and to be home with. As I mentioned before, we have a very special guest tonight from Utah. I met Christine Heatman a few months ago when we made our first event, and Mr. Pompeo was here. And Christine was very talkative with her relationship to Israel, how much she loves Israel, and how much she wants to go to Israel. And since then, we created a very nice relationship with her. And coming so far from Utah, I would like her to say a few words for Israel Heritage Foundation. Christine Heatman, please.
Well, I would like to thank everyone here. This is such a humbling experience. And to our secretary, former secretary, Mike Pompeo, I just told him, we miss him. Am I right? And if he's going for president, I'm going to be right there. America. I've got to put on my glasses. You know, when you're past 40, you know what happens? The eyes just kind of digress a little bit. So I made a few notes because I'm not real good at remembering everything. So I'd make a really poor actress because I'd never remember my lines. But America, the proud and beautiful that I know and that I all know that you know, the most powerful country, the one of opportunity, of freedom, of capitalism, religious choice, and much more, that has provided me unlimited challenges to go from a welfare mom to founding my company and world brand in professional skincare to help. That's what I did, was to help. It wasn't about money, because we all know what that is about. To help burn patients, accident survivors, surgical and congenital facial problems. And this led me to becoming a very successful businesswoman, which I never set out in high school, because I went to a Catholic all-girls high school and I got kicked out, so that they were not charmed by my tricks that I played on everybody. But recognized as a leader and legend in my industry, which I'm so proud to be a part of, because I changed the narrative of skincare. It's all about health. So many view capitalism as greed. That's not the case. We are all here because we embrace the capitalist compassion. With our charitable donations, and this juxtaposes our relationship with Israel that I love. The America-Israel relationship is substantially important because we all share the same values, the same beliefs, because we believe that hard work and opportunity of every person, we have an equal chance of success. And I am living proof of that. We need partners like Israel. This is so vitally important. We want them to work with America, our beautiful America, to bring the peace and prosperity in this world. That is why I am so proud and humbled to support the Israeli Heritage Foundation and my love for its important work to bring us all closer together. So let us keep up the fight for our common values to battle the darkness and shine our light for America and Israel forever. And it's because of that I wear the American flag with the Star of David every single day. And I thank you so much for this opportunity to share my love for Israel and this foundation, and may God bless you all.
Well, that was unbelievable, Christine. I hope you feel great about coming from Utah. That's a long way. That's a long way, but I think it was worth it, right?
Well, you're all invited to come to Utah.
Yeah, we were in Utah not too long ago, my family, and Zion Park. That's a different part of Utah. Okay, I loved it. I loved it. We had probably one of our greatest vacations ever there, Zion Park. I want to mention Richie Taylor, the head of the NYPD, is here tonight. Where is he? I lost him already. I see Joel Eisdorfer is here. He's representing the mayor of New York. Okay, he's chief advisor. Joel Eisdorfer. I don't think Yaakov Sorel and Shabzi Saperstein were mentioned as, oh, you mentioned them? Okay, we got to mention everyone in this crowd, because otherwise, every one of you is very special, very, very incredible to come out right before Rosh Hashanah. So we're very happy you're here. And I'm sure I can't see everyone here yet, but okay, very good. We're going to introduce Ken Abramowitz. Ken Abramowitz is, we go everywhere together. Rachel Ehrenfeld, I should have mentioned her too, because she writes for the Wall Street Journal. She's probably one of the best writers the Wall Street Journal has, and writes particularly on the Arab-Israeli conflict, and particularly the ins and outs. Probably knows more about the real story that you don't read about or hear about. She's I think she's coming out with a book, right? You're coming out with a book, Rachel, right? So, what's the name?
George Soros' Agenda.
Oh, it's coming. She's coming out with her book, and it's going to tell you how Abbas, Arafat, everybody else has become basically billionaires, the richest people in the world, at the expense of their people. That's basically what. Am I right? No one even knows. They don't. The regular media doesn't want to cover this, but the truth is, all of these leaders well, certainly Abbas, certainly Arafat, and most of the leaders of the Arab world, whatever money we give from America, it's not simple as to where it goes. And she's followed the money trail and done the research, and I consider her a world's expert on actually where the money is going from America, from our taxpayer dollars, to the Arab leaders that we call Arab leaders. In any case, Ken Abramowitz will give us an insight as to the state of the world, and it's very important for the secretary to always hear from Ken Abramowitz. He's always a breath of fresh air.
So welcome, everybody. I thought in honor of my favorite Secretary of State in the history of Secretary of States in the history of America, I thought I would give a 4-minute update of everything that's wrong in the world and how to fix it in 4 minutes. I want to also thank my friend Dr. Joe and Rabbi Melnick in the Israel Heritage Foundation for all that they do for Israel and America. I'm very proud to be associated with them. So I'm going to, of my 4 minutes, 3 minutes will be a little heavy, so to speak, and the last minute will be very exciting. So just bear with me for 3 minutes of not good news, and then 1 minute of good news. So I'm going to answer the 4 questions. It's sort of like Passover today, but different questions. Are we in a state of war or peace? Who declared war on us if we're in a state of war? When did they declare war on us? And why did they declare war on us? So first of all, just ask a rhetorical question. Are we in a wartime or peacetime? Well, I'm going to answer the question. We're in wartime. Human beings are always in wartime. It's like asking a lion or a zebra if they could speak English. Is it wartime or peacetime? It's always wartime. Human beings are just warlike creatures, unfortunately. So the question is, who declared war on us? So I color code who declared war on what I call we the people, us. It's the reds, the greens, and the blues. Now I'm going to define the reds, the greens, and the blues. The reds are the communist socialists. The greens are the Islamists. By the way, in terms of countries, the reds would be Russia and China, North Korea. The greens would be Iran, Turkey, and Qatar, who are financing the Muslim Brotherhood. And the blues, color-coded blue for the United Nations, are the globalists. That includes the World Economic Forum and also some of the high-tech companies that we have that act like non-Americans. They act like Chinese, actually. That would be Facebook, Twitter, and Google. And then the question is, when did they declare war on us? The Reds declared war in 1917 when the communists illegally took control of Russia. The Greens declared war on us about 1,400 years ago when Muhammad and his followers illegally declared war on the Christian world and took over many of the Christian countries, which are now Muslim countries like Turkey, Syria, Egypt. And the Blues declared war on us 100 years ago with the League of Nations in 1923. So this war has actually been going on a long time. We just don't know it or don't think of it that way. And so I actually call this World War I. But because World War I was already named or numbered, I call it World War III. Now, if you want to go further back into history, approximately 3,300 years ago, we're fighting the golden calf. Now, the golden calf in history was golden, was obviously yellow. The golden calf today is red, green, and blue. You could call it one golden calf that's multicolored, or you could say there's 3 different golden calves, and we're fighting them. So the war, depending on how you look at it, has been going on for 3,300 years, 1,400 years, 100 years, however you want to look at it. But it's been a long time. Now the question is why? Why did they declare war on us? We're good people. We believe in the rule of law. We believe in secular law, Constitution, Bill of Rights. We believe in religious law, Bible. So what did we do wrong? Why did they declare war on us? Because we committed a sin from their point of view. We believe in life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness for 100% of the population. The elitists, reds, greens, and blues, believe in life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness for 10% of the population themselves. They're in business to steal money. So they're angry that we're in business to actually help 100% of the population. And this war has been going on since the golden calf. Now, the bad guys have aided by thinking from the Chinese. The Chinese wrote a book about 20 years ago called Unrestricted Warfare. So they know how to fight on many different planes. So I monitor 6 forms of warfare. Physical war, obviously, cultural war, economic war, legal war, demographic, and cyber. So if you have 3 bad guys and they use 6 forms of warfare, we're actually fighting 18 different wars or 18 different fronts, which is a mess. And that's why every day is a mess from us, because we don't know how to fight 18 wars, but we're going to learn with new management in the future. So let me just conclude on a happy note. I have 2 happy notes. One is, what's the solution to this mess? What's the solution to World War III? Or what's the solution to fighting 18 fronts? Number 1, we need to have a theme. We, the people, need to have a theme. And I can't think of a better theme than what our founding fathers came up with in the Declaration of Independence. We stand for life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness for 100% of the population. It's nothing to be ashamed about. It's something to be very proud about. Number 2, we need passion, more passion. So there was a very famous, or sort of famous movie 40 years ago called Network. Anyone remember the word, the movie Network? So they had a very famous scene. The lead actor, Peter Finch, was in a fight with his network, a television network, and he was very, very angry over some internal issues. It doesn't matter what. So he opens up his window in Manhattan and shouts at the top of his lungs, "I'm as mad as hell and I'm not going to take it anymore." And then all the neighbors open up their windows and they start yelling, "I'm as mad as hell and I'm not going to take it anymore." Well, we the people are as mad as hell and we're not going to take it anymore. So that passion, a theme, life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness, and passion will lead us to victory in the House and Senate on November 8th, will lead us to victory in the governor races. Governors are also important. We have 28 of them, 28 governors who are normal. We have to get rid of the other 22 governors who don't want to be normal. You can't do it all together, but every state that we pick up and bring into the normal union is good. And then in 2024, we have the challenge of the century, because the bad guys are not going to easily go away. But we, with a message and passion and great leadership, will restore this country back to where it should be. So I want to leave you with a New Year's resolution for Rosh Hashanah. This is a new resolution you haven't heard. Let's make our founding fathers proud again. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Okay, wow. Let's make our founding fathers proud again. Okay, we should always make our founding fathers proud, that's for sure. I see a few people. I'm not going to be able to recognize everybody, and I wish I could. I see, is William Daroff here? I think from the President's Conference. I think he's here somewhere. I can't see, but I know he's coming. And then, okay. I see Dan Eberhard is here. Dan Eberhard. He's an unbelievable man. We went to Israel together, and I'll never forget that. And he's on Fox every day. Fox Business, sorry, Fox Business. It's a different kettle of tea, I guess. But what is it? Not enough. We don't see Dan Eberhard enough. So hopefully, maybe you'll be able to say a few words. Maybe for us, not just for Fox. A couple minutes. I need Farley Weiss to come up and say a few words first. That's all. Farley Weiss represents chairmanship of Israel Heritage Foundation. He's a former president of the National Council of Young Israel. Boy, did we go through a lot together. Anyway, we're together again, and he's the chairman, and I respect his opinions immensely. He was very close to John McCain. Matter of fact, he brought John McCain to the National Council of Young Israel twice. He's very close to Senator Kyle. He's coming out with a book with Senator Kyle, who put out the original embassy to move to Jerusalem embassy. He was the original founder or senator that went behind that. I'm sure you'll speak about this. And Farley was right there with Senator Kyle, John McCain, and I'll never forget that. But anyway, he's very involved in politics. He came all the way from Florida for this. So give him your utmost attention. Thank you.
Thank you very much. It's great to be here. See Secretary of State Pompeo has a great event put together again by Dr. Joe Frager and Rabbi David Katz and President Stephen Soloway and my friend from Young Israel Days, Zev Berman here, and so many important people here. I very much appreciate it. The story Ambassador Friedman told about Secretary of State Pompeo is that he would bring every ambassador and with the globe, and he would go and say, what country do you represent? And after they would point of a country, he goes, no, you represent the United States. And the fact is Secretary of State Pompeo showed that the United States priorities are what's best for the United States, and that's why you saw such amazing policies towards Israel. For the first time, you really saw a Secretary of State and administration do policies that were really in the best interest of the United States. And last time I was here, I enumerated so many things he did for Israel, like with the passports, changing them to say Americans born in Jerusalem, saying they're born in Israel, fighting anti-Semitism, appointing Elon Carr, leading the fight against that important issue that's only getting worse, unfortunately, since he's not in office anymore. And there are many different things, but one of the things you do as Secretary of State is you want to improve your relationships with your allies, and you also want to weaken your enemies. And one of the things that was mentioned earlier is that he was part of the administration that made the decision to assassinate Iranian General Qasem Soleimani. And I heard on a podcast with Ambassador Ron Dermer, Israeli ambassador to the United States, that after he was assassinated in January 2020, Iran stopped further developing their nuclear program for the next 10 months until they saw Biden got elected president, and then they changed and started rapidly advancing it to the way that Israeli Defense Minister Gantz says they've tripled their production of their nuclear weapons program in the last year because we don't have Mike Pompeo there, and all of a sudden things have gotten much worse. And what you've seen is that also with the Palestinian Authority, Mahmoud Abbas, when he was in Germany recently, he couldn't condemn the Olympic Munich massacre because he financed it. Abu Daoud wrote a book about it, how he kissed him and wished him luck right beforehand. And he honored him. When Dawood died, he called him a hero and talked to him as a hero. And they named squares in the Palestinian Authority after terrorists. And they actually give incentive money, hundreds of millions of dollars, to Palestinian Arabs who murder Americans like Taylor Force and murder the Jews as well. And what happened with Mike Pompeo was Secretary of State, America stopped sending aid to the Palestinian Authority. And so what you see is that you see somebody who had the courage from his amazing, unbelievable biography and background to go and change policy, a dramatic change for the future. And Dr. Frager mentioned that I'm involved with a book with my friend, lawyer Glennie Grunstein, on the right of the Jewish claim to Jerusalem, that it wasn't just that American decision recognized Israel's right to Jerusalem, but it was historically and legally the right thing to do. And we're going to go from the biblical times all the way to today, that it actually was U.S. law from a treaty with Britain after the Balfour Declaration, that the United States said that they would support the recognition of a Jewish state in the state of Israel, all the way through that Secretary Pompeo, who actually made sure there was a decision by the State Department that says that that settlements in Judea and Samaria are legal and are not illegal anymore, which was a previous decision. He corrected that historical injustice in another tremendous decision by him. So my great honor to be here. We thank everybody for coming, and thank you, Secretary Pompeo.
Farley Weiss, thank you very, very much. Okay, we're almost, we're right on time, Secretary. So don't worry, you be prepared. We're right on time. We're not wasting any time here. Okay, I have to call Sam Namias. Sam, and then I want to call Dan, and Brock Pierce just appeared right here somewhere. There he is. Brock. Okay, say hello to everybody, please. The father of Bitcoin, right here. Not kidding. You'll hear from him, don't worry. But he is the father of Bitcoin. Okay, Sam, please. Sam Namias has become very close to the Israel Heritage Foundation. He's the commissioner of bridges in Nassau County, where I live. And Bruce Blakeman appointed him. Bruce normally would be here with us. He's been at every one of our events. But Bruce couldn't be here because he had other commitments. But also Pete, by the way, Pete Hegseth sends regards to you. He had a family emergency. He had to fly, I don't know if it was Minnesota or Tennessee, because he's all over the place now. So I don't know, but he would have normally been here, and he told me to send you regards. Okay. Sam Namias, Commissioner of Bridges, but he's much more than that. That's just like a tip of the iceberg for him. And anyway, we wish him well because he just had surgery. I don't know how he showed up here today, but he showed up here, and he looks great, right? So there you go. Refuah Shlema. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Frager. It's wonderful to be here tonight with so many distinguished guests. Secretary Pompeo, big fan, by the way, very big fan. Love the work that you did. And it's just really delightful to be of like-minded people in one room. There's so much that I could talk about, but the reality is, I want to segment from the Israel Heritage Foundation to Israel, the connection, and how important it is, and of course the work that our Secretary Pompeo has done. I mean, the Israel Heritage Foundation focuses on one of its primary ideas of passing on what previous Holocaust, I don't want to say they were survivors, but I would call victims, their wish and what they wanted. They wanted to have their own land. They wanted to have their own place that they can call home. And, thank you to the Israel Heritage Foundation for keeping on that important promise of carrying on the wishes of those that perished during the Holocaust. I got to say, I have my family is kind of of Sephardic European descent. My father, his family had to flee the Inquisition many, obviously hundreds of years ago to Spain, where he lived in Morocco, from Spain to Morocco. And my mother's side, my grandfather had to flee, ultimately helping to save many Jews during World War II and ultimately becoming a diplomat to the United States from Uruguay. And when you look back at the history, on one end they had to flee, on the other end, they had to flee. No one's safe when you're being persecuted. And to have a country like Israel that you can call your own home. I mean, my father was the bodyguard for Ben Gurion. When he got across the border from Morocco, he was right away swept in. He actually lied about his age, put a line across 15, the 5, and looked like 18, and he was swooped up into the military, tall guy, became the bodyguard for Ben Gurion. He fought for this country, and today he's alive, and he says, thank you, Secretary, for what you have done, and for recognizing Jerusalem as the capital of Israel. And I have nephews that are 2 IDF pilots that also fight for Israel today. I mean, here's an interesting couple of facts, if you think about it. Israel ranks 100 in global population, right? All right, there's nothing, all right, it's just a simple ranking. But most people don't know that it ranks 28 in gross domestic product. If you look at those 2 variables, it basically means that people there are contributing 4-fold to what others are contributing to the gross domestic product of about $500 billion. But it gets better. Look at Israel's military power. It ranks 18 in the globe. That means that civilians in Israel are contributing 5-fold to the average of their population. You know, I leave it with an interesting story. I don't want to take up a lot of time, but it's almost how I compare Israel. You have a group of people are going hiking in the mountains, and a lion comes out of the bushes. One guy sees this, small little guy, backs up, sits down, takes off his hiking boots, puts on his sneakers. The crowd looks at him and says, "What are you doing? You cannot outrun a lion." He goes, "You're right, but all I have to do is outrun you." That's Israel, my friends. And that's what Israel has done. Today, they contribute tremendously to global medicine, being able to use the ocean to create clean drinking water. I mean, they've done everything they can to innovate. And I'm proud to be part of the foundation that supports the values and the message of what has happened in the past to our own people, and to continue with the foundation. And most of all, Secretary, thank you very much.
Sam Namias and Monica, his wife. Where is she? There you go, Monica. Okay, great. I promised Dan Eberhard to say a few words, so I'm going to keep my word. And then we're going to get Brock Pierce. So Brock, get ready.
Thank you, Joe. Good to see you, buddy. Thank you. So, hello, everybody. So I'll just say I went to Israel with Joe, and we met with Netanyahu, several generals, and several historians, and some other things. And I learned quite a bit about Israel on that trip. And one thing that I will never ever forget is our meeting with Ambassador Friedman, and him describing the importance and how they got it done, moving the embassy to Jerusalem. And Secretary Pompeo and Donald Trump were the architects of that. And I just like to give them a round of applause for that. I think that was a tremendous thing that was done. What really struck me from my trip to Israel was that defending life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness starts with defending Israel in the Middle East. And they're the tip of the spear. They're under a lot of pressure. And America needs to stand behind Israel and next to Israel. And I will never forget my trip there. I'd like to spend just 60 seconds on energy, which is my forte, and tell you guys, look, the Biden administration, what they're doing, it's bad for the consumer, and it's bad for the country. It's bad for the consumer because they're choking off supply. They're trying to make us more reliant on foreign oil, not less reliant. And you guys saw Biden went to Saudi Arabia. He asked for more production. They actually went in the opposite direction and are producing less. I mean, just a complete abject failure. And you won't see that on the media outside of Fox or Newsmax. You're not going to see that reported in the media. Also, Biden has put the SPR, the Strategic Petroleum Reserve. Sometime when you're on a boring conference call or something, or in an Uber, spend 2 minutes on Google on this. It's absolutely amazing. He's giving away our security, our energy security, 1 million barrels a day. It's the Strategic Petroleum Reserve, not the Political Petroleum Reserve. And he's letting 1 million barrels a day go, 180 million barrels total, which is about 80% of the SPR, all for political reasons. And at the same time, and I'm sure Secretary Pompeo knows this, China has been increasing their strategic petroleum reserve. Absolutely amazing. He's putting our country at risk and at the same time hurting consumers by choking off supply and pushing energy costs up. And I think it's just absolutely abysmal. We need to get somebody like Mike Pompeo in the White House or somebody similar, and I'd like to see that happen. Happy to be here, folks.
Thank you, Dan Eberhardt. Okay. Thank you, Dan, for participating in every event that we have hosted for many years, and God willing, for many years to come. So, Brock Pierce, you're on. All the way from Puerto Rico. I don't know how you beat the hurricane, but I guess you did, right? I don't know how you did that, but you got here. He beat the hurricane just to be here at the dinner tonight. Okay, that's how special he feels about Israel. I know you love Israel. I know you love the Jewish people, and the father of Bitcoin, Brock Pierce. Okay, man. You gave me a good coin. So.
Beautiful.
Okay, you're on.
All right. Well, good evening. Good evening. It's a pleasure to be here. I did dodge the hurricane, which was by avoiding my trip to Puerto Rico this weekend. Saw it coming and didn't want to get stuck. I'll be home soon enough. But it's a pleasure to be here with everyone as we talk about subjects that are important to our collective future, not just here, but in Israel and in the world. It was worth highlighting again, I think, the innovation and what has given Israel a lot of what has made it what it is. It's a hub of innovation as a small country. I think it's also worth touching on security, law and order, as we're here in New York, and making sure that New York is safe. You know, a lot of people have been leaving because they don't feel safe having their families here. And really support Mayor Eric Adams as a former police officer that hopefully can make this place safe as something we share. And, you know, rather than touching on, you know, the Bitcoin side of things as well, I was also the founder of Tether. We invented the stable coin, the US digital dollar, that's doing over $50 trillion a year in transactional volume as we think about upgrading our financial system to be a system that provides for financial inclusion. About 2/3 of the world's population today is financially underserved. You know, they're on or underbanked. And as we think about how we build a world that can work for everyone, Maslow's hierarchy of needs, it's foundational. Another subject matter that is near and dear to my heart right now is food security. You know, we got major disruption to our food systems and how people are going to be able to eat through this winter and how we address those issues. And so it's a pleasure to be here as we end the Jewish year. This Sunday is the beginning of the new Jewish year, and I've been spending time in Israel, very supportive of Israel and all of its causes. And so it's a real pleasure to be here as we talk about our nation's future. You know, as we enter the midterm elections as well, what can be done now through 2024. Thank you for having me. God bless Israel and the new year. Thank you so much.
We wish him well. I mean, I hope you can make it safely down to Puerto Rico. I know he lives there and he flies up frequently, but he's a great man. And I hope Bitcoin finally picks itself up and really does take over the monetary system. The Pièce de Résistance, the Israel Heritage Foundation is honored and privileged to host Secretary Mike Pompeo a second time. This is his encore. I know it's going to be hard to get you in the future. I realize how hard it is, but we hope to get him in the future too. The fact that the Iranians have placed $1 million bounty, I think that's too cheap, on his head, says a lot about the strength and courage of this great American. His time is now. America deserves him, and he deserves America. Michael Pompeo served as the 70th United States Secretary of State. He previously served as director of the CIA. He had served nearly 4 terms as a congressman from Kansas, 4th District. He graduated first in his class at West Point in 1986. He graduated from Harvard Law School, where he was the editor of the Harvard Law Review. And his accomplishments as Secretary of State are legendary. The move of Israel's embassy to Jerusalem was directly related to Mike Pompeo's efforts. He brought about the recognition of Israel's sovereignty over the Golan Heights, and I am sure in due time he will bring about the recognition of Israel's sovereignty over Judea and Samaria. Please God. I have a signed document that he says he'll do that. So I'm going to hold you to that. But I don't think I have to hold him too long because I know he wants to do it. After all, it's Mike Pompeo who declared that Israeli settlements are not inconsistent with international law, and Judea and Samaria is the rightful homeland for the people of Israel. Bringing peace to the Middle East is no easy task. The Secretary was light years ahead of anyone else in establishing the Abraham Accords. Israel and the world are forever grateful. As we approach the day the first man, Adam, was born and the day of judgment, we show our gratitude and New Year wishes by presenting the Chauffeur Award to the one and only Mike Pompeo. Happy and healthy New Year to all. May God's blessings be showered upon Mike Pompeo. I now introduce to you one of the world's leading lights and beacons, Secretary of State Mike Pompeo. First, we present the award. Please get up here. Make sure we get in here. Jerry, get in here. Please. That's a chauffeur. That's what we use on high holidays.
I know it well.
You know all about it.
I do.
Ed, please get in. Please get in. Ed Cox.
Dr. Soloway, please.
Where's Dr. Soloway? Is Christine here?
Okay. Good.
Great, thank you, sir.
You got it.
Thank you.
Try to do our part.
Thank you.
That's,
Do you want to blow the chauffeur?
oh yeah, I do want to read the inscription. I'm going to put the glasses on.
You bet, you'll need that.
Okay, the inscription. Special ram, yeah, we sacrificed this ram. Yeah, just for the secretary. Blow the shofar at the moon's renewal at the appointed time for our festive day, because it is a decree for Israel, a judgment day for the God of Jacob. Presented to Secretary of State Mike Pompeo, who has been a chauffeur to the nations. His clarion call is appreciated and respected. Wishing him the greatest success and a happy New Year, September 18th, 2022.
Thank you. Good evening. Happy New Year to you all. As I've been sitting here tonight listening to the various comments, it is, of course, incredibly humbling to have such kind things said about you. But it also reminds each of us of our duty, our responsibility. And I thought that's just what I would speak to tonight. I thought I would say a few words about discipline, and then we'll have a good conversation this evening. As you read the Bible, Old and New Testament, there's lots of talk about discipline, about faithfulness, about commitment, about a set of understandings, about the things we know are right and true. If you look back at the list of the works that we did for 4 years to develop the relationship between the United States and Israel, they all stem from that central understanding of doing right and duty and of doing the things you know to be true. I heard someone say the other day that, Mike, it was fantastic. You recognized the fact that Israel is the rightful Jewish homeland, including Judea and Samaria. But of course, this is just a fact. For a long time, our government, and to this day, many governments in the world, and indeed today, even in the United States, there's this sense somehow that Israel conceptually doesn't have a right to exist, that the Jewish people don't have this as their homeland. I had the incredible privilege, it's been now 3 months ago, to travel to Nablus, to Hebron, to Shiloh, to a handful of places in Judea and Samaria which I had not been able to get to before. I stood there standing between the tomb of Abraham and the tomb of Sarah. It is not possible to stand in that place without understanding that this is the Jewish homeland, that God brought his tribes to this place. And the fact that the world doesn't recognize this is indecent and immoral, and something that I am confident that God will hold us accountable for. It is an incredible privilege to have been a small part of an administration that understood that and that worked for it tirelessly. Certainly for America's own best interests, its own security interests. Certainly for Israel's interests, its own security interests. But perhaps most importantly, because it was decent and right, and it was our duty, and to be disciplined in our faith. My faith as a Christian, the faith of Jews, to do anything different would have been inconsistent with what we owe our Savior and God. We took a lot of heck for it from all the places you'd expect. The New York Times had a field day. Even in our own administration, I remember the meeting vividly. Ambassador Friedman's written about it a little bit in his book. Even inside our own administration, there were those who just thought, recognizing Jerusalem as the rightful capital of Israel is dangerous. But of course, when you do what God commands, when you do the things that are right, then God will smile upon you. You can go read statements from, the dozens of secretaries of state that came before me. You can go read the things that they said. They all said that if we did this, in spite of the fact it was required under American law, if you did this, there'll be World War III, that there'll be an intifada that exceeds all those that had come before. But of course, that's not what happened. It's not how things unfolded. It is not how God directed our history, our mutual history between our two countries. When one understands duty and one is disciplined and one is faithful, I am convinced that God will continue to watch over us. Dan, you spoke about energy. You spoke about the risks to the world from the fact that the God-given energy that sits underground today here in the United States, in the Eastern Mediterranean, in places that are the rightful property of the Israeli government, and indeed in places all across the world, energy over which we have an obligation to be good stewards and to use in a way that is proper and decent and efficient. But to deny that to the world, to deny this thing that people need to live their lives, to take care of their families, is fundamentally indecent. It is not disciplined. In fact, it goes against God's words. We talk about it in the security world, we talk about it as a geopolitical matter, but it is the right thing to have done. There will be this winter, there will be people whose lives are impacted. Perhaps not as much here in the United States, but more in Europe. There is real risk to these people that they won't be able to do the most basic things, including feed their family and heat their home this winter. We all understand that getting this right is simple and decent, and indeed it is our duty. I had this incredible privilege for 4 years. First to serve as America's CIA director and then as its Secretary of State. And I say all the time, I was the 70th Secretary of State. Donald Trump was our 45th president. Every day I was reminded there was more turnover in my gig than his. And so I checked my cell phone dutifully to make sure I still had a place to go to work. Twitter is a mean thing. But what we did each day was an attempt to be right and decent. We did not get it right every day. But we demonstrated to the world that good partners like the United States and Israel can deliver security not only for our two nations, but for people all across the world. I'm deeply proud of the work we did. I was blessed to have been a small part of it. And I thank you for all your kindness, and Dr. Frager for welcoming me back here again this evening. I am happy to have a conversation with you about just about anything. Thank you. Who's got something that, yes, ma'am.
Why do you think Biden is so eager to cut a deal with Iran?
So the question is, why do I think that President Biden is so eager to cut this deal with Iran? You know, the truth is, most times when there are debates, political debates, I can argue both sides of a case. I can make my arguments adversary. I can make their case. I understand. I can't explain this in a way that's not either cynical or demeaning or suggest incoherence. But it seems to me that this is both cynical and incoherent. I think in the end, part of this is vindictiveness. I think part of this is President Obama did this. It was his signature accomplishment of his second term. And so there's this sense of Trump undid it, I want to go do it again. I also think, though, there's something deeper. And I think this is what not only Israeli leadership today, but leadership throughout the Arab world today understands. I think the Biden administration believes that Iran can be a force for stability in the region. I think that's crazy. I can't understand that logic. I can't make the case for it. But as you stare at their policies, you watch that they're prepared to give them some $1 trillion in wealth to create and continue their terror campaign. It can only be because they believe somehow that there should be a balance between the Shias and the Sunnis, a balance between the Muslims and the Jews, some sort of balance in the region. The truth of the matter is, anyone who stares at this, and that this is not political, anybody who stares and just does the math on who it is that presents continued risk not only to Israel, but to the Arab Muslims, to the world, it's pretty straightforward. And the fact that their president is traveling to this city this week and is being interviewed by our media, treated as if he is a world leader. Leslie Stahl went and did a 60 Minutes interview in Iran. That is unconscionable. I'm all about free media. I'm all about everybody saying the thing they want. This is a man with enormous amount of American blood on his hands, and we ought not permit him to come to our country. Yes.
How much of the money that is supposed to go to Iran will stay with the Hunter Bidens of this country?
You know, I don't know how. I think most of the money that would come to Iran as a result of the lifting of sanctions will go to the Ayatollah and to the IRGC. I think, pick a number, 80%, 90% of that money. Very little of it will trickle down to the Iranian people. Some of it will go to Hezbollah and to the Houthis and to the Shia militias in Iraq. But most of it will stay in the hands of the kleptocrats in Tehran. Yes. Yes, sir, Steve. Yes.
So, with all the people flooding the southern border, I want to know if you agree that, why don't we let in 100,000 Ukrainian refugees who will be productive? And I think you agree with this, but I want to hear you say, yeah, the border is such a crisis, and yet there's all these people who actually need a place for safety, and then they want to go back to their own country. This isn't even brought up on social media, or CNN, or Fox, or the NBC. Nobody talks about this.
Yeah. Well, hard to know where to begin. So it is the case that immigration policy in the United States for a couple hundred years was a set of policies structured around a set of laws, an understanding about decisions that nations make about who gets to have the magic blue passport. Right, this thing that is so precious that people will do crazy things. They'll risk their lives to come get a chance to come live in the United States of America. The fact that we have chosen to essentially have what are open borders, that we have a vice president who said, no, they are not walking across our border, right? I try to be kind, I try to be gracious, I try to be generous, but that's a lie, right? A lie is, I would have told my son, is someone who says something they know to be false, in an effort to convince others that it is true. As for what's going on at the southern border, I'd say this too. Often the case gets made by those who prefer open borders that it's just impossible, that you can't stop it, that it's too difficult, the terrain too rugged, the border too long. That's simply not true. We demonstrated that. We demonstrated it took 2.5 years into the Trump administration to get it right. But we had demonstrated that the root causes that Vice President Harris speaks of, the poverty in the Central American countries, the root causes are real. These are poor places. But the root cause of illegal immigration is an America that has abandoned its willingness to protect its own borders and its own sovereignty. That is the root cause of the problem we find today. As for decisions about how many Ukrainians to let in and how we handle refugees, once you get illegal immigration back in the box, once you have again reaffirmed the central thesis that America should get to decide who gets to come to America and be American, then it becomes pretty straightforward. And I would not limit refugees from Ukraine. There are many places where it would be appropriate for there to be Americans to come here, but it should be a decision based on a simple understanding that America has not only the right but a duty to ensure that it determines who comes here. The risk of fentanyl and the risk from the cartels that are controlling much of our southern border today is grossly underreported and truly something that as a CI director I saw and kept me up. Yes, sir.
How do we contain the threat coming from China?
How do we contain the threat coming from China? We don't have enough time. I mean that seriously. It is a deep, complicated problem. But as with all problems of this nature, the first, it's like any good 12-step program. The first thing you have to do is acknowledge you have a problem. And for goodness, since 1972, maybe since 1982, we refused to acknowledge that China was at war with us. That China was conducting economic warfare against the American people in the deepest, most dangerous ways. And for at least 20 or 25 of those years, we sought to engage more. And that may have made sense for 20 years or 25 years. It's now demonstrably untrue that that's going to make the American people safer and more secure. How do you push back against it? We started, but I concede only started. There was a lot of work left to do when we left office. The central understanding that was effective was this idea of reciprocity, this idea of fairness, this idea of a set of rules for all. Today, Chinese company wants to list on the New York Stock Exchange. They have special rules. They are a favored country. A Bulgarian country or company, or a Canadian company, and even an American company that would like to register on the New York Stock Exchange, different rules. Why do we do that? We wanted to encourage Chinese investment in America. We thought we could draw them closer. We should simply demand the same rules. That if a Chinese company wants to be on the New York Stock Exchange, sounds good, but we get to see your books. More importantly, not we, but the investors get to see your books. Today, anyone want to go try and buy a piece of Chinese farmland near one of their military facilities? You would fail. The Chinese are purchasing land near our military facilities all across the country. This is crazy. So the most important thing we could come to do is recognize the challenge and then demand that the Chinese Communist Party treat the United States the same way we treat the people of their country. I've said this a bunch of times. I believe this with all my heart. There's a couple of hundred Chinese persons inside of China that are members of the Communist Party. There's 1 billion plus of them that I think share my view that their government is presenting enormous risks to them. I pray that the Chinese people will get a chance to have leaders that are aiming to make their lives better and not leaders that are making to make the lives of those leaders better. You talked about Abu Mazen. We could identify corrupt leadership all across the world. The Chinese Communist Party leadership is equally corrupt. Yes, sir, Dan. Yeah.
Mr. Secretary, we were together last in March. The Russian-Ukraine war was a month old. They just had this offensive, I guess, the Kharkov. What is going on? Like, what is the end game on both sides?
Yeah. I think when I was here then, I think you're right, it was March, so it would have been some month on from the inception of the current Ukrainian invasion. But I always remind people, Vladimir Putin has had the same intentions with respect to Europe since he was a young man. And as much as I like President Bush, he said that when he looked into Putin's eyes, he saw his soul. I looked into Putin's eyes, that is not what I saw. So we should just, as we think about how this might end and we think about what objectives are, we should never mistake what Vladimir Putin's objectives are. It is the restoration of the Soviet Union or Greater Russia, however one wants to characterize it. It is in his heart. It's hard for us to understand. It doesn't make sense to us. I'm from Kansas. I am confident that Kansas is part of the United States. But if you ask me why I think that, it would take me a minute to explain it, right? I'd have, well, you know, there's this history. Vladimir Putin believes Ukraine is part of Russia. In the same way that I believe Kansas is part of the United States. It's ipsy dixit. It goes without, there's no requirement for logical explanation. It is just true. And once you accept that understanding, you know full well that Vladimir Putin isn't going to stop. Nor will those around him. They share his same view of greater Russia. And so what does that mean? That means that from the American perspective, that you have to do the work, the hard work of restoring deterrence. Once you lose it, as you can see, it's hard to get back. We lost it in 2015, the first time Putin took part of Ukraine. American people, I'll bet if you asked 80% of the American people, they would think, oh goodness, he invaded Ukraine in 2022. No, he took a fifth of it in 2015. This is a continuation of Vladimir Putin's effort. There's no reason to think it will stop until the West, with Europe in the front, is resolved and determined to demonstrate that the cost for him is too high. You spoke about the risk that there's this war on, that is the nature of humanity. The truth is that Vladimir Putin is intent on this restoration, and that if he dropped it tomorrow, if he said, let's cut a deal tomorrow, this would simply be a pause. There is no reason to believe that Vladimir Putin has any idea to change. I pray for the Ukrainian people. The work that they have done is remarkable. You should know that you, the American taxpayer, have done an awful lot to help them, not just in the weapon systems that we have provided, but when I was the CIA director, I spent a fair amount of time in southeast Ukraine helping Americans train Ukrainian special operators. This is good work that has undermined Russia's military advances and provided an enormous amount of training and effort and leadership that the Ukrainian military could not possibly have been successful without. My guess is this goes on for a while. The more the Ukrainians are successful on the battlefield, the more Vladimir Putin's perception of risk will change, and the more he'll have to recalculate about at least what he will do in the short and medium term. I mean, there's always risk that Vladimir Putin will use nuclear weapons. You should note there's risk that Chairman Kim will use them. There's risk that Xi Jinping will use them. We all know that there's risk that should the Ayatollah obtain them, he will use them. This is why we work, to demonstrate that the cost of using these ungodly weapons will always exceed any benefit that someone might perceive. I pray that we have done the hard work and communicated with Putin the rationale for why it would not be in his best interest, or certainly Russia's, to use them. Yes, sir, right here.
What is the Republican Party doing to preserve the integrity of the upcoming elections in 22 and 23, including the various activities such as ballot harvesting,
Yeah.
I don't want to enumerate the other
Sure.
underhanded tactics they're employing, so that
You bet. So the question is, what the Republican Party doing to make sure that we have sound elections, good election integrity in 7 weeks or 8 weeks, what we've got left, and then in 2024. I would challenge you to ask the question differently. What's America doing? This isn't about the Republican Party. This is about our republic. Having elections that we know and trust to actually deliver us the outcome that the American people selected is at the essence of who we are as a democracy, as a republic. So I'd say 3 things. First, we should remember that this is not the first time that we've had trouble with our elections. I'm sitting here 6 feet from Ed Cox. Richard Nixon had an election stolen from him in 1960, as sure as I'm standing in front of you. The Democrats think there was one stolen in 2000. Everybody remember hanging Chads? This is unconscionable that in the United States of America we can't have elections that we can validate and trust. I've watched some states begin to get it better. Georgia passed a really good piece of legislation. There's lots of places it's getting better, but we all know how to do safe and fair elections. This is not complicated. It is political. There is a party that doesn't think it's right to mandate that you show your ID to do the most important thing you do as an American citizen. This is a party who thinks it's okay to have absentee ballots for everyone, and we know the risk associated with large numbers of mail-in ballots. It's just, as Attorney General Barr said, it is prone to risk of actual fraud, and it is really prone to the risk that people won't have trust and confidence in the outcome. There are a handful of simple things you can do. For me, I'd go back to paper ballots, same-day voting in person with an ID. It may be that that's a bridge too far for the moment, but we know how to do this, and this is an absolute imperative. I pray that not just Republicans are focused on this. Every American ought to know that when Sally is declared the winner of a school board race or a city council race or a district attorney's race, that she in fact got the most votes. It's imperative. Yes, sir.
So Secretary, before you got in as the head of the State Department, it's been, the Iranian file has been wrong on U.S. policy towards Israel, and since you left, they went back to the wrong policy again. When will the State Department employee, the bureaucracy, everything start to change, to start to come when they saw the success of your policy, and now they've gone back to the failed old policies?
The State Department career people that are working on this file will never come, they'll never come to understand the way we approach to Israel. It's not in the cards, at least not in the relevant time period, without massive changes at the State Department. It is culturally important to them. It is historically the place that they have found themselves. And by the way, that's across a broad swath of the American political establishment. It should be lost on no one that these same policies were in place under multiple Republican presidents as well. I think the most important thing we can do with respect to making sure that we get this right is to make sure that the political leadership that has its reins and the capacity on making those decisions are the right people who understand this relationship in the way that the Trump administration most fundamentally did. I wish I had higher hopes for the Middle East desk in the State Department, but I know them. There was somebody back there. Yes, sir. I can barely see you with the light here.
Brock again.
Hi, hi, I got you.
Last time we were together, we talked, I asked a question and you gave an answer related to China, but specifically in the context of semiconductors, you know, the foundation of our technology and industry, and you had given us some information about plans to bring some of that onshore so that if something happened with Taiwan or South Korea, we would not be cut off from technology essential to compete from a compute perspective. I'd love to know your thoughts again on that.
You bet.
And any progress that's been made.
You bet. So there's been enormous progress made, real progress. You can touch it kind of progress. There are now 3 companies that are building semiconductor wafer manufacturing facilities in the United States. For those of you who, like me 5 years ago, who couldn't have told you what that is, this is the central trick to producing semiconductors, if you will. It's a central technology that underlays every phone that's on everybody's desk, every vehicle that you drive. Your refrigerator now almost certainly has a semiconductor or 2 in it as well. The vast majority of those semiconductors today, certainly the most sophisticated ones, are made on the southern part of Taiwan, a company called Taiwan Semiconductor Manufacturing Corporation, and the United States lost the bubble. While we were the dominant force in this manufacturing 20 years ago, now relatively little of that, some 12 to 14% of that manufacturing is here. So we set about, really, Secretary Ross and myself, to convince companies to come back. We created something called the CHIPS Act. It is now law. That law was different than the one that we had proposed in material ways. But the truly good news, I'll give you both the good news and the bad news. The good news, thank you. The good news is that a company called Samsung is building a big fabrication facility outside of Austin, Texas. TSMC is itself building a huge semiconductor wafer manufacturing facility just outside of Phoenix. And our good friends at Intel are building a $18 to $20 billion plant in Columbus, or just outside of Columbus, Ohio. The bad news is 3 to 5 years before any of those has the first wafer come off the line, and the fact that the American doesn't have a workforce that can actually deliver against these plants at this point. So there's an enormous hurry. and an enormous amount of training that will have to be done. And Xi Jinping in China knows that this window where either destroying this plant or taking over this plant could wreak havoc on Western commerce and our way of life. And we have a real gap before we can begin to address that need. All the more reason we ought to be providing continued significant support to the people of Taiwan and their sovereignty. So good progress. I wish we'd have started 10 years ago. I suppose I could say that about a lot of things in life. Yes, ma'am.
What can we do to halt the anti-Israel sentiment in the Democratic Party? Do you think there's a real threat to bipartisan support for Israel?
So the question is, what can we, this group, Israel Heritage Foundation, do, to address the growing anti-Semitism inside the Democrat Party? Or the anti-Israeli, I think you said anti-Israeli. Aside from voting them out. Yeah. I have enough trouble getting my own party to go the right direction. But my thought on this isn't terribly different than where I began my thoughts tonight. You just have to speak the truth. Part of the Democrat Party attachment is to a misunderstanding of the people who live in Judea and Samaria. Right? It begins. We have BDS movement springs from this. A great deal of anti-Semitism. I worked as CI director. Abu Mazen is a terrorist. Right? It's different from the Gaza Strip. It's not Hamas, but the corruption, the kleptocracy of the leadership of the Palestinian Authority is equally at risk. And I think there are too many people in the progressive movement who don't understand that. It verges on anti-Semitism. It is certainly anti-Zionist. And the best I can hope for is that we can continue to expose them to the truth, tell them the truth, teach them about why this matters, and then continue to make this case, not just inside the United States. The progressive left all around the world has this misunderstanding, this misconception of Israel. And all we can do is pray and work. I wish I had a better answer than that. Yes. Yes, sir. Goodness. So I do less prediction than I do work. So the question's about 2022. So I was in Portland last night until 10 o'clock. I flew in this morning. I was in Oregon. Anybody tell you how Republican Oregon is? They have a reasonable chance of having not one but 4 members of Congress that are Republican this cycle. Thank President Biden for that. I feel pretty good about the election. But rather than predict or tell you we're going to gain control, I think what I would urge you to do is make sure that you're doing all the right things to increase the probability that we have a successful election. It is absolutely essential that we gain back at least control of one of the 2 houses. I was reminded last night when I was standing talking to this group. By the way, in Oregon, in the Republican Party, Portland is a 4-letter word. It's really something. I mean, you see it out here in New York City too. The lawlessness, the homelessness, the lack of civility in America's urban core today is something that no one from any party should ever tolerate. And so we've got to do the hard work to make sure that we have a successful election, that we gain control of the House. And if we do, we'll begin to turn the country back in the right direction. Sure. I'll leave other. So the question is, what's President Trump up to? He's down in Mar-a-Lago watching the FBI raid his home. I mean, what happened there is outrageous. No one gets to keep classified information outside of the place classified information should be. That is certainly true. The Secretary of State, former Secretary of State, doesn't get to keep it. No one does. But for the Department of Justice to behave the way they did by raiding the home of a former president is absolutely outrageous. And it is politicizing a Department of Justice that I fear is headed in a way that is not consistent with the understandings that we all have of the rule of law here in the United States. Yes, I talk to the president from time to time still. Yes. You can ask him when he comes. Yes. Yes, ma'am.
Under the Trump administration and the State Department, we were quite aware of how the Chinese government is taking control of Central America and parts of South America.
Sure.
And by giving them loans, giving them ownership of land and things like that. You were aware, President Trump was aware. Biden is not aware or doesn't want to be aware.
Yeah.
How is the State Department under Biden can reconcile that?
Yeah. No, they're aware. The risk of Chinese political control in places you talked about, Central America, South America, certainly true in Africa. We've watched them advance in the Pacific Islands as well. But and so the State Department's aware. It's a matter of, are you prepared to grab allies, friends, partners, and build out a set of alliances that will impose real costs on them for this behavior, which in the end will be bad for the people of the countries that are engaged in this. But I would share with you that the problem in Central America or Africa, it is real. The problem's here. The real threat from the Chinese Communist Party isn't their colonialism of Africa. That's bad. It is their effort to gain political influence and control here inside the United States. I ran some great operations as CIA director. I am most proud of the operation we ran in the Chinese consulate in Houston, Texas, where there was a massive spy ring, and we shut it down. That's not in Solomon Islands. That's not in the DRC. That's not in El Salvador. That's in Texas. And for years, your government was aware of this and didn't do the hard work of protecting the American people from the espionage threats of the Chinese Communist Party here at home. I fear that the Biden administration is moving back in that direction, still not doing the things that matter here at home. If we can't get it right here, if we can't prevent the Chinese from buying land, from them selling technology like TikTok that's stealing the information from every one of your grandkids as they watch TikTok, if we can't do those right things here at home, the chance of us helping someone in the Pacific or in Africa or Central America is exactly zero. I've got time for one more question, and then I've got a few thoughts that I will leave you with tonight. Yes, ma'am.
Thank you, Mr. Secretary. This is a conversation that comes up all the time.
I'm about to knock that over.
With respect to the fact, who is really running this country? Because we all know that Joe Biden can't put a sentence together, let alone,
Yeah.
I mean, he doesn't have the brains of a parakeet, let alone run the United States.
So I get this question or something similar to it all the time. I prefer to answer it this way. Joe Biden is responsible for all of the misery for which we are suffering. We ought not cut any president of the United States any slack. He is the commander-in-chief. He is the president of the United States. And so when we begin to ask the question, well, who's controlling him, right? One can go down all kinds of. I prefer to go back to the founding and back to the Constitution about the things that we just know to be true. And in the end, the bureaucracy, the Justice Department, the State Department, these things are under the president's control. He is responsible and should be held accountable for the good things that happen here and all of the things that cause such enormous anxiousness among the American people today. The fact that gasoline prices are high, that moms can't find baby formula, the fact that we have a wide open southern border. One need not go down some path about who's driving this to know the response that the United States must take to this. And I think we, those of us who are Republican and conservative, make an enormous mistake by trying to play this media crazy little game about like who's in charge. The answer is we know precisely who's in charge. President of the United States of America is in charge, and it is President Biden who should be held accountable for all the things that confront us today. Yes. Yes.
Well, were you by any chance the Heathcliff Hotel, which was
started in Portland, Oregon?
I was around Portland. I was out in Washington County, so I didn't get to Portland. Let me finish with this thought tonight. You all have been kind. Thank you, Dr. Frager, for this award, for the shofar. It will sit prominently in the back of my Zoom views. I often get tired, and I hear and watch other people get tired. And when I get tired, I think about folks like you who are prepared to come out on a Sunday evening to be part of this community. And the great things that happen in America always happen as part of community. It's easy to look at Washington and blame Washington, or turn to Albany and watch what your governor is doing and pray that Lee Zeldin gets elected. But the reality is that the duty, the place that I started tonight, the hard work and the faithfulness begin in our communities. They begin in small places. They begin in our synagogues and churches. They begin in the soccer teams that we coach for our kids. They begin at PTA meetings. They begin by demanding our school boards are reflective and responsive to their parents of these children who just simply want an education. You all give me courage. You give me enormous strength. You give me enormous energy. Thank you for that. Do not lose faith. Remain optimistic. I am enormously long on the United States of America. We will, as we have done for a couple hundred years now, rise through this current moment and continue to be a beacon to the world and the most exceptional nation in the history of civilization. Thank you. May God bless you all. Thank you for your kind words tonight, too. Thank you. God bless you.
I have no words.